men need an endowment of identity. Our theology is full of this.
Yeah.
Like every ordinance we do, every ordinance we renew, it all comes around this concept of identity.
Nothing lit a fire under me more to like stop wasting time. Welcome everybody. Today's episode is awesome. I talk with Kurt Francom, who's from Leading Saints. We talk about masculinity in the scriptures, about leadership in the scriptures, and this is one of my favorite episodes that I filmed, and it's because we are talking about things that will be talked about at his Warrior Heart men's retreat that he does, which was a formative experience for me before I went on deployment. I went on this men's retreat. You're disconnected from the world for 3 days. You're talking about gospel-oriented things, and it's a great time to reconnect with God. And so me, Jackson, Brandon, Britton, the whole Stick of Joseph team, we're going to be there this next April at this Warrior Heart men's boot camp. It's nothing cringe or crazy. Like when I say boot camp, it's not one of those things where like guys go out and pretend to be in the military. No, it's just you get together, you have amazing meals, there's fun activities to do out there, and then there are just classes and times for reflection and writing and things of that nature. So love for you guys to come. If you want to come, you get $100 off with code Stick of Joseph at checkout. So we hope to see you there. It's April 27th through the 29th. All the information is in the description. Let's get to the video. Welcome everybody to another Stick of Joseph episode. And today I'm rolling solo. Jackson's super sick, but I have an awesome guest who is going to more than make up for Jackson's absence. We got Kurt Francom. What's up, man?
I mean, suddenly the pressure's on. I got to be Kurt and Jackson.
And Jackson,
all right.
You got to be both. No, so I'm really excited to talk to you. We've talked on the phone many times, and the first time that we really interacted, I went to one of your men's retreats, the Warrior Heart retreat, and it was right before I went on deployment. I remember you invited me out there, and you're like, hey, this would be a good experience for you before you're going out on this crazy adventure of being away from your family, preparing for war for a year.
Yeah. Was I right? I mean,
You were, and I was a little skeptical at first. You know, I think most men are.
Yeah,
that's mostly how men feel. They're like, I don't need to like go talk to other guys, and are you gonna make me talk about my feelings or whatever?
Yeah. We're gonna put on war paint. Run through the woods. Walk on coals.
But I went out there, and it was an amazing experience. One, because I just was able to disconnect from the world for 3 days, like no cell phone, nothing, and then I felt a lot of spiritual growth. And so that was a formative experience for me. It was awesome. My dad later went while we were on deployment. It was a formative experience for him. It's amazing. But what I want to talk about with you today is what can we learn? Because the focus of your podcast, Leading Saints, is how do you help Latter-day Saint leaders, stake presidents, bishops, whatever it may be, how do you help them lead in a Christ-like way? And then on this other side, you're talking specifically about masculinity. How do you help men and things like that? And so I want to say, what do the scriptures have to teach us about men, leadership, masculinity, all of that? So that's why I wanted to invite you here.
Well, that's great. And there's so many directions to go with that. And leadership, obviously, the scriptures are books of leadership, right? And people can define leadership in so many different ways. I think, you know, in modern culture, it can sometimes feel like, how do I motivate people? Yeah. Like I got this group of people, I need them to do something for me because I'm the quote unquote leader. Yeah. And how do I do that, right? When in reality, maybe it feels a little bit too modern, or but in the scriptures, it's more of like, how do we inspire the hearts of men, right? And essentially, that's what God is doing, is inspiring the hearts of men, and you know, obviously, I mean women as well, and that there. But like, how do you change somebody to the point that they're willing to charge into battle, into war, or do what feels like is impossible because of something that's happened within them. Yeah. And a great example of that is, you know, in Alma 43, you know, this is just looking, and this is the epitome of a leader in the Book of Mormon, Captain Moroni, right? I mean, when
people think about masculine and leader, it's Captain Moroni.
You've seen the actual photographs of this guy.
Yeah,
I mean,
he's jacked.
He is jacked. Right? I don't know how they got him. But he spent some time in the gym, right? But his leadership is so interesting because he can come across as such a rugged, masculine, you know, general. Yeah. And So, but how did he do it? How did he lead men, right? Was it this domineering, this tyrannical, he just got in their face and say, hey, if you don't go to war, I'll kill your family? Like, no, obviously that didn't happen, right? He was a man of God. And I just love these nuanced, approaches he had, like in chapter 43, verse 48. Here they are in a battle, facing the fierceness and the anger of the Lamanites. And it says that the men of Moroni saw this fierceness, and they were about to shrink and flee from them.
From the Lamanites.
From the Lamanites. And Moroni perceived their intent, sent forth, and inspired their hearts with these thoughts. Yea, the thoughts of their lands, their liberties, yea, their freedom from bondage. What is that? What is he calling out there? Title of liberty, right? Which he talks about in future chapters there. But just this ability to take them, to ground them in a vision of a focus that actually meant something to them, right? They're not going to go to war just because Captain Moroni is going to yell really hard or threaten them with a sword. They're going to go to war because of what they're fighting for, which is their liberty, right?
And can I read? I'm going to read the next verse because I think it's interesting. And it came to pass that they turned upon the Lamanites, and they cried with one voice unto the Lord their God for their liberty and their freedom from bondage. And they began to stand against the Lamanites with power. And in that selfsame hour, they cried unto the Lord for their freedom. The Lamanites began to flee before them, and they fled even to the waters of Sidon. And so it's not that he just inspired them to be able to face the Lamanites, but to eventually conquer them. And to where were they turning for their strength as well? It was to the Lord. And one thing, being in the Marine Corps, you are exposed to many different types of leadership. And I do quote because there's really only one type of leadership, and it's when people willingly follow you. Everything else that doesn't have people that are willingly following you is not leadership. You can be a manager. There are managers in the Marine Corps. They're really good at managing people. There are tyrants in the Marine Corps that are really good at making you do stuff for fear of your own safety or the safety of the people you love, right? And those aren't leaders, though. There's only one type of leader. It's someone who inspires in their hearts other people to willingly follow. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And that's the interesting about leadership, is that this is the way I see it, is leadership is synonymous with formulating culture, right? Of a group, of an organization, so that there's a culture of productivity, a culture of success, a culture of progress, rather than you're just trying to herd cats or trying to force them to do something. And it's interesting, you said there's only one type of leadership, and I also, using that one type in a different context, is Elder Sterling Seal. He was a general authority back in the 60s, 70s. He was actually the bishop of President Nelson when President Nelson got baptized. So, but he was the leadership guy. And there's a famous talk he gave at BYU in the 60s, and he said, there's only one problem in the world, and it's leadership. If you get a good leader, all other problems go away, right? And there's example after example of that in the scriptures and in life. And that's the interesting thing we found with Leading Saints. I started Leading Saints back in 2010. It was just a hobby blog, because I was a young leader who I just wanted to do a good job. Like, does anybody have a good ward council agenda or just give me the ABC, whatever, and I want to do a good job, right? And then over time, what we found is that there are formal leaders in the world and even in the church, but there's also a lot of people who identify as a leader, regardless of their calling or whatever it is. And so every individual, if they see themselves as a leader, that's where they can inspire change, regardless of their calling, their position. It all comes back to their influence or how they're stimulating the culture in which they are. Yeah. So.
And I think you're 100% right that a leader, at the end of the day, what he can control is a culture. You can't, like I pointed out, you can't be a leader and also controlling people.
You're right.
But what you can do is you can control a culture that fosters people to want to follow or to do the things that you want done, right, as a leader. Joseph Smith has that famous quote, right? It's just like, I teach people righteous principles and they govern themselves.
Right.
When he's asked, how is this working so well?
Yeah.
And I also think about the culture that Captain Moroni is building. So we see it more in Alma 48:7. We'll start in 7 because that's where we see the anti Captain Moroni, which is Amalickiah.
Yeah.
So it says, and now it came to pass that while Malachi had thus been obtaining power by fraud and deceit, Moroni, on the other hand, had been preparing the minds of the people to be faithful unto the Lord their God. So first off, he's building this culture of like, we could get strong in many different ways, but the first thing that we need to get strong in is being faithful to the Lord our God. And then comes the other stuff. He'd been strengthening the armies, erecting small forts, building walls, and preparing, right? Taking the weakest fortifications and putting greater numbers of men there. And so, like, that's the sort of, so, like, two things that I point out here is, like, there's a culture of putting God first, and then a culture of preparation, like preparing for war. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I love the concept I have highlighted, preparing the minds of the people. Like, it's so easy, like, you think of a typical concept of leadership in the church, like ministering. You know, I hear it all the time from elders quorum presidents, from relief society presidents. How do I get my people to minister? Or insert whatever motivational thing that I want this group of people to do something. What do I do? Like, give me the 5 steps of how to motivate these people. When in reality, it's a much more organic process of, like, what are you doing to prepare their minds, right? I remember I was called as an elders quorum president, and we took at least, like, 3 solid months of elders quorum meetings.
Yeah.
We didn't touch the conference talk, lesson. Not because we were avoiding conference talk, but I needed to create a culture there where we're preparing the minds so that once we do dive into conference talk, it's the purpose and reason is clear and how we do that, right? And so I love the genius of that leadership of, like, they're saying, what do I need to do to prepare the minds for these men to be faithful to God? We can't just jump into all right, we need to erect small forts and throw up some banks of earth here. Like, he could have just jumped in there, like, you over there, go do that, right? But instead he took a much more organic process, knowing that this is a individual developmental experience for each one of these individuals.
We're talking about, so there are leadership principles, and then, something you also talk about is masculinity.
Right.
How do those weave together? Like, because the majority of leaders in the church are men in terms of, like, official positions, right? So, like, how do those weave together?
Yeah.
I'm just curious.
So this goes to, and this, if there's, like, relief society presidents listening or people who are leading women, that a lot of these principles fall into place. We'll just use the masculine context for this. But John Eldredge, who's the author of Wild at Heart, he's a Christian author. Great book. To me, it should be required reading for all men and their wives. But he does a great job of starting at the beginning with Adam. And to me, the first question ever asked in the Bible, or at least the first question God ever asked, was, Adam, where are you? And what a reflective question for every man to ask, of, like, hey, Hayden, like, where are you? Like, really, where are you at? Right? Because with men, we can be doing the things, and we go into the work or deployment. Or I've got the uniform on. I'm doing the things. Like, I'm good, but no, like, where are you at? Like, where's your heart at? And time after time, there's throughout the scriptures is this focus on God changes our heart, and then our behaviors start to change. Right? He goes after Saul's heart, and then he becomes Paul. He doesn't say, hey, could you start acting like an apostle? And then I'm going to call you to apostleship. He goes to fishermen. It goes after their heart, changes their heart, and they become apostles as well, right? There's example after example of this. And so we start with the heart of, Adam, where are you? And then what are the core desires? Like, did God put masculinity into our heart? And what is that if he did, right? And John Eldredge, he has a framework called the core desires of a man's heart. So there's 3 core desires that he says that every man needs: a battle to fight, an adventure to live, and a beauty to love. Now, I found, generally speaking, those are very helpful. And we can talk into, like, a battle to fight. Men need, like, a trophy to hoist that they're going after. Like, you see it in the Stick of Joseph group. Like, you are in a brotherhood here. You're all battling together for something, right?
Yeah. Purpose greater than yourself.
Exactly.
You are sacrificing for. I think that's what it is, really.
Yeah.
Right. When you are battling, you are willing to make the ultimate sacrifice. You're putting yourself in danger, at risk for something greater.
Yeah, and that comes in different shapes and sizes, but men need that type of thing. It's the men who kind of get stuck in the grind. They're just kind of going to work, and they've lost themselves, right? They can't answer the question, Adam, where are you? And then an adventure to live. You know, they need I've talked to one individual's like, I've never felt closer to God than when I'm on the river fishing, fly fishing. I'm like, well, sounds like you need to do a lot more of that, right?
Yeah.
There's something about, they always say like women connect face to face and men connect shoulder to shoulder, right? Like going out and serving and doing something, right? I'm going to feel more connected to men after a hard fought, pickup basketball game or, whatever stuff you did on deployment. It was like, it wasn't the classroom setting when you're like, oh, that's a great
after
point
being
he made.
in a rainstorm, shivering.
Yeah, exactly.
Like where you're literally snuggling together for warmth,
Yeah,
like
exactly.
That's when
and you're telling stories, you're connecting, and then you leave like, oh, I'll go to war with that guy, right?
100%.
And so they need that adventure, or they need the golf trips, they need the, going hunting or whatever, like being in those rainstorms, not because there's something they can point out and be like, that's the ingredient. It's just that in our nature, like God put that in us. We have a heart of adventure. And then lastly, a beauty to love, which is, there's something about that connection. And you've done several episodes on, just that, the yin and the yang of the male female, that for men, they need that. Now, it's interesting. I kind of took those core desires and I thought, well, that's cool. John Eldredge put that together, but he comes from a very Protestant, traditional Christian perspective. I thought, with all the revelatory concepts that we have, how can we best connect with the heart of men? What are the core desires with the perspective of the restored gospel that God has put in our heart? So I came up with some, and I'm still working on these, see if they fly. But the first one is men need an endowment of identity, right? And now our theology is full of this. Like every ordinance we do, every ordinance we renew, it all comes around this concept of identity. You are baptized in the name of the Father and the Son of the Holy Ghost. We go to the temple to receive a new name, right? So like God is on this quest of not reminding us of all the behaviors. Hey, remember all my commandments? Now they have a purpose, but his core focus is, I need you to know, Hayden, who you are, so that when I ask you, Hayden, where are you? You can say, I'm right here with you, God. I know who I am. I'm your child. I'm your son, right? And the beautiful, when Satan comes tempting to Moses and, he says, Son of man, worship me. And he says, for I am a son of God, right? Like the best response to temptation is a statement of identity. And God has given us identity after identity, right? And in the context of men, like men need this endowment of identity, where I feel too many leaders or thought leaders, they come to at a place of like, well, what men need is something hard. They need duty. Let's get in their face and say, here's the task, go do it. And that's actually good for men, right? Which is true. However, long before that, they needed this foundation of that I'm beloved, like I'm God's son, and he believes in me. He's put in me whatever it takes to succeed in this world. Because if men don't have that, they begin to pose. Or they act like there's something they're not, trying to artificially, create that endowment, when in reality that has to come from God, right?
Yeah, that posing thing is something that we talk about a lot at the Warrior Heart retreats. And the thing I love about it is, at the end of the day, you have these people, because of this crisis of masculinity that is existing not only in the church but everywhere else, what you have are a bunch of posers that are standing up and saying, no, this is what it means to be a man. The Andrew Tates, the this guy who does look maxing now. I don't even know his name. Have you heard about this?
Look maxing.
Look maxing. It's all about
I certainly feel like a boomer.
Everything you can. I feel like a boomer too talking about it. But it's like you do everything you can to like look good. And so like this guy literally hammers his jaw because it creates micro fractures, which allegedly like make your jaw look stronger,
like more rigid or something.
Yeah, it's crazy. So what happens is, in that void, you have a bunch of posers who come up, and then you have men who will eventually follow that, and they'll follow that pose, right? But at the end of the day, like every single man is a mixture of masculine and feminine traits. That's the yin and yang, right? Like you have the white and the black, and then you have the dot of each of them in each, right? And so when we're talking about masculine traits, it doesn't mean that every man has these masculine traits. It means that these are generally masculine traits. These are generally feminine traits. And the thing that is awesome about what you're talking about is like, it's about understanding your identity by finding that out from God and from other men in your life, right? Mm-hmm. Which I think you're going to talk about how you can't actually get it from women. You have to get your identity from other men. But then that unlocks the full you instead of trying to fit yourself in a mold of an Andrew Tate or, someone else. But why is it that men can't get their identity from women? Why does it have to be from other men?
Yeah, and John Eldredge says that, like, every man has a hole in his heart that can only be filled by other men. Mm-hmm. And we lose that. As we age, we really lose that. But as a young child, I mean, we could probably rattle off scouting stories or camping stories, hunting stories, where we're with other, or we had a tribe that we would prowl the neighborhood with of other boys on our bikes, and we were the gang, right? Yeah. And so naturally what happens is we age through that, and we sort of categorize that experience. So that's sort of a childhood thing, right? Yeah, it's time to grow up and time to move on. It's, you need to go get a degree, dial in your 401k and show up for your family, right? And then, so we lose ourselves in this family context, which is obviously endowed by God, and we don't know how to gain that strength. Yeah. And then when we have a bad day, we often go home, we turn to our wife. Like, can you make me feel better? Whether we're saying these words or not, right? No, or we turn to sex, whether it's in the context with our wife or it's in the context of pornography, because we just need to either numb out and get rid of this discontent we feel. And so we think, well, if I can just dial in my marriage, if my marriage is good, then my job will start going well, right? Yeah. But what we don't realize is that we are taking home our garbage and dumping it in front of our wife, being like fix this, like do it, right? When in reality, what our family needs is someone who can show up with strength and has strength to offer, right? And we have to go somewhere to get that strength or commune with God in some fashion. And we need that fathering, right? Whether that's direct fathering from God or a model of fathering in our lives, right? So that's why male relationships are extremely crucial, right? And so if I'm having a bad day, or if I'm struggling with pornography, or if I'm struggling with my job or career or whatever, for me to turn to another man and say, hey, can we talk about this? It's not because I'm going to cry and he's going to wipe my tears away and we're going to hug it out or whatever. But for him, it's a different dynamic there in that brotherhood, that then you can return home with strength, right? Yeah. And that doesn't mean I don't discuss any issues or problems with my wife, but it's a different cadence, that I'm not codependent on her, or expect her to say, hey, you've got to do A, B, and C, so I'm feeling okay, right? And sometimes it's the other way around. Like you've got to do A, B, and C so that you feel right. That's a beginning of a very unhealthy relationship, right? For sure. And so, that's what we often take this question, or God, every man is born with the question, really two questions. One is, do I have what it takes to succeed in this world? Do I have what it takes to be a man? And am I the apple of your eye, or am I beloved? Yeah. Right? And that's why it's so important to go back to you need an endowment from God of identity. Mm-hmm. You need God to put in your heart, you're my beloved, right? Because, you look at the life of Jesus Christ, like he gets baptized at the beginning of his ministry, the heavens part, and, behold, this is my beloved son. Yeah. Nobody stood from the banks of the Jordan River and said, but wait, he hasn't done anything yet. Like, no, he was beloved from the beginning. And in John 9:15, it says, even as the Father have loved me, so have I loved you. Like, that statement can get me through any bad Thursday, right? Like, that God loves me and he believes in me. And so, again, going to the source of that strength and taking my question to God, and sometimes it is I've been invalidated online, or, I've had a rough day, or my wife is mad at me because I'm just never measuring up or whatever. I can always go to God and say, can you remind me one more time? Like, am I beloved? Right? Yeah. And that's a source of strength.
And it's an ongoing process, as you just highlighted. Yeah. It's not just once you hear you're my beloved, and then all of a sudden you're like, I got my identity, I'm good to go. No, it's like this consistent thing, because the world is constantly working to degrade your identity. Yeah. And I had to experience this a couple days ago, actually. Man, this was a bad dad moment for me. I just had lost it. Like I was just being selfish and rude. And well, actually that was after this, but I just had a bad dad moment where I was just like kind of yelled in my house. I had to walk outside. I chilled out. And then my son comes out and he's like, trying to fix me, right? And that's not his job. His job is not to try to fix me. But I see how much he values what I think about him.
Mm-hmm.
And even before, I had my meltdown and yelled, I had this rule. I was like, hey guys, we can do a movie night with popcorn. All we need to do is I need you guys to go upstairs and start cleaning your room, all right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'll come up and help you in a little bit. And they just would not do it. And so eventually I was just like, all right, guys, sorry, no movie night. And then my son's like throwing a tantrum. He's just like, why would you? So I take him outside and we just go for a walk around the house. We have a pretty big yard. And I just explained to him calmly, I'm like, hey man, sometimes in life, if you want something, you have to do something you don't like first. So you wanted to have a movie night, and the thing that you don't like doing is cleaning your room. Dad has to do this all the time. And so you're going to have to learn from this scenario. Next time I ask you to do this and you have something you want to do, just follow through and do it. And he's like, he understood it pretty well. He's like, Dad, I'm such a loser. And it broke my heart because that's not what I'm trying to tell you, son.
Right.
You're not a loser. But I could just see that was such a poignant thing where it's just like, there is this thing inside of all of us, and you could say it's the devil, whatever it is, that's constantly trying to tell us, you're a loser, you're a loser, you're a loser. And how quickly, even when me as a father, I'm looking at my son, and I love him, he is beloved, and I tell him that often, right? Like in this moment where he does something that sucks, he says, Dad, I'm a loser. And I'm just like, it blows my mind, but that's happening to us all of the time. We're constantly in this battle where we do things that are dumb, that we regret, and then all of a sudden we take on that identity rather than the identity that God's trying to willingly give to us. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we are in a constant battle of heart, and we often mistaken it as a battle of a behavior. Like it really wasn't about the room, right?
No.
Of course, you want him to grow up and be a clean person and knows how to keep his life in order, but it was all about that identity. And it's so interesting that the adversary is playing the same game of identity, where he will find every moment to slip in and say, actually, you're a loser. When his father is trying to teach him, you have such potential. You're beloved. You can figure this out, right?
Yeah.
And so having that frame of mind is so crucial of reminding ourselves that, especially in parenting, like you are an image of God who's trying to bestow identity on this child, right? And those simple conversations are such a powerful way to clarify that.
There's one other thing I got to share just because it's it demonstrates this idea that especially as men, we crave to get our identity from men, men that we respect. So right now, I'm living in the house of my grandparents. My grandpa, he was literally born 80 meters down the street in another small house. He was born on the kitchen table there.
Oh, wow.
And then as soon as he got married, his dad gave him a piece of land, and he built his house on it, just right down the street. Like it's just right there. And it's about an acre. It's a beautiful yard, old house. And we're living in it this year. And me and my grandpa were super tight. Like I was the grandson that was like over there probably more than the other, grandkids. And I just loved being around my grandpa, helping in the yard, all of that. And when I was a kid, I used to say something often. I would say, I want to be a worker man just like my grandpa. Like that's what I would tell my parents. When people would ask me what I wanted to do, I want to be a worker man just like my grandpa. Because I would go over there and it's a huge yard. It's got an orchard, it's got gardens. And so you have to work out in the yard. So I always just saw my grandpa working. And when we moved into that place, I was building the crib for my son, and my boy, my 4-year-old, he was next to me and he's wanting to help, right? And it's kind of annoying when you're trying to put something together and it's like it's gonna be so much. You can barely hold
the wrench.
Yeah,
right?
it's just like it's gonna be so much harder. But someone just told me let him help out. And so I taught him how to use the drill, and he's like, I'm holding the thing, and it's so funny too, how there are just these universal things that men understand. He's trying to get the drill in the screw properly, but it keeps slipping out, and you see him just go every dad knows that feeling when you're trying to do that little thing. So he does it though, and it's successful, and he's so excited, and he stops, and he looks at me in the eyes, and he says, Dad, when I'm older, I want to be a worker man just like you.
Whoa.
And I'm like in my grandpa's house. I have my son there, and it just like hits me so hard. And it's just like this identity of like being a worker man, of serving people, of working out in the yard. Like it was passed down from my grandpa to me, and now now my son craves after that identity as the type of man that can work in the yard and accomplish things and build stuff. You know what I mean? And so it hit me so hard. Like our identities not only come from God to us, but they come from generations, from our ancestors, you know what I mean, that are passed down one to the other.
Yes, exactly. And that is, you overlay that on our theology, and it fits perfectly. Like the house of Abraham, like this is what we're doing. We're passing down identity after identity. And it's that identity that your son is being endowed with at such a young age is, I'm a worker man just like my dad. And you're saying I'm a worker man just like my grandpa. Yeah. And he's going to be in some foxhole someday probably on his deployment and being like, I can do this because I'm a worker man just like my dad, right? Yeah. And so men need that, right? And so often we skip that and being like, well, let's just shove duty down their throat. Yeah. And maybe then they'll get the clue of, you got to do hard things. You're strong now, right? Mm-hmm. But it's so buried in shame at that point because they haven't grasped on or anchored themselves in a clear identity. And our theology is just, that is our theology from the beginning, right? And just another sort of caveat, you said that of let him help out. Is that what you said, right? Yeah. You know, it's so interesting talking with other Christian, faiths or Protestants, and they always come back like, what's with the temple thing? Like Jesus alone, right? Yeah. Why do you got to go? You've debated that or talked about that at nauseum, but I always love the framing of like, it's almost, are we saved by grace by Jesus Christ alone? Yes. He did 100%. But it's almost as if whether God the Father said this to him or it came out, so it's like, hey, why don't you let them help? Mm-hmm. And the fact that we can go to the temple, we can sit there, we can do the thing, I got the name and this is the person. Are we saving that person? Yeah. Are we saving that person? No. Yeah. But he's letting us help. And it's beautiful, to go there for a family member name or just some guy who's like, oh, this guy's from Switzerland. Maybe I'll meet him someday, right? Like that's a beautiful sanctifying thing when God lets you help in his work. Right? Yeah, and I have a perfect example. Like you say this, and I have the perfect example of this. So this weekend, I was cleaning out my grandfather's garage, and there was a bunch of old spray paint cans that are empty that are left over, and they're just sitting out in the yard, like so many. I don't know why he was keeping all these empty spray paint cans. It's like, come on, Grandpa. It's like 86 years of stuff I cleared out of this garage. It was wild. But the garbage was full by the time I cleaned all these out. So I was like, I'm just going to set them on the grass and then I'll throw them away, as time goes on. It's 8 feet away from the garbage can, right? But my son, we got him for Christmas a little Jeep that has like a truck bed in the back that you can put stuff in. And what I did, instead of just spending 5 minutes to pick up all these and throw them in the garbage can, I would take 3 of them, I'd put them in the backyard, and I was like, all right, son, I need you to drive the Jeep around, go pick up these spray paint cans, put them in the back, and then drive back around and throw them in the garbage for me. And 2.5 hours, he and my other 18-month-old son, who just sits there just looking around, you know what I mean? Come on, pull your weight around here.
He's just riding with his brother. He's just driving around, picking up the spray paint cans, driving back, throwing them in the garbage, and then I go grab 3 more and I put them. And it would be really easy for me to just hurry and throw them away. I could have done that, but I just know that my son, he wants a sense of purpose. He, like he said, he wants to feel like he's a worker man. He wants to be a worker man. He wants to assume that identity. And I think that that's very similar to what we're saying. Is he really helping? No, he's not really helping, right? I could get it done way quicker and easier, but I'm helping him by letting him help.
Right.
Does that make sense? Yeah. And that's exactly what you're saying with, with us participating in temple ordinances for the dead.
Yeah, and you're answering that question to your son. Do you have what it takes? Of course. You got the truck, man. Put him in the truck, right? And so it's stimulating that core desire of God putting us. Going back to the scriptures, there are every story in the scripture you can look at and be like, God, did Nephi really need to go back to Jerusalem to get the plates? They were just there. Yeah. You knew that. Why didn't you just
have them get them before?
And they just show up, or Laban's inspired. It's I think you need these. There's so many easier ways to do it, but there was something about that adventure, that call to a mission, that developed Nephi into the man that he needed to be. That we love and cherish at the end of Second Nephi, where he's just this pure prophet, that was developed that way. Yeah. Which leads me to the next core desire that I put is, the first one being an endowment of identity.
Yeah.
The next one is a call to a mission, right?
Yeah.
And I'm using all this like LDS jargon because we relate to it, but you probably remember that feeling. You got that mission call. You're just like, this is me. Like, these are my people. I'm going to go like save the world.
My story arc.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Like you were invited into a larger story that, and your heart shifts differently, right? When you're even on deployment, you probably show up differently than maybe the boringest job you've had, right? When you're like, no, we're on mission here, right? And again, a lot of men lose this later in life. They get in the rigmarole and they're just sort of like, well, I just got to make it 10 more years, and then I qualify for that pension, and then maybe we can go see the world, or maybe, right? When actually men's hearts need this mission, this purpose, throughout it all. In Moses 1:6, I have a work for thee to do, right?
Yeah.
And Doctrine and Covenants 42:53, thou shalt stand in a place of thy stewardship. I'm like, oh man, I just want to live my life and figure out what my stewardship is, because there's development there, there's purpose there.
Yeah.
And a lot of men lose that.
For sure. It reminds me of this actually, dude, because this is something that you do in Warrior Heart. We're gonna watch this.
You're gonna show
one
a
of the
clip?
things that I love, and I was talking to my dad about this. Like, one of the things that you do that's just awesome is just showing these clips of movies that just they fire you up. It's, I mean, it's just Okay, let me pull up this clip real quick from what's the tank? Oh yeah, Fury.
A good Elders Quorum activity night movie is Fury.
Yeah, Fury. Maybe not.
So good.
But this right here, this is obviously from Isaiah 6:8, right? And it's being read in this context of these guys who they're essentially on a suicide mission. They have to hold this. All the other tanks are destroyed. They got all these Germans coming to them, and they have to hold this road. And they had the ability to leave, but they all made the decision like, hey, I'm going to stick behind, and if we die, we die, right? And so this is the context he's reading this verse.
What we're doing here is a righteous act, gentlemen. You hear me, Gordo? Mm-hmm. There's a Bible verse I think about sometimes. Many times. It goes, then I heard the voice of the Lord saying, whom shall I send? And who will go for us? And I said, here am I. Send me. Send me. Book of Isaiah, chapter 6.
So I love that in the context of what you're saying is just like, we want to be the ones that the Lord says, hey, I need someone to go, right? And it's something where, and for you to be able to say, send me, and then go off, like that's a craving, that men have. It's going back real quick, and it kind of goes with this. As a Marine and as a Christian, there's just this conflict that you live in, right? Where on one end, you understand you don't want to go to war, because guess what? Your friends are going to die. Like, you watch war movies, right? And there's all the chaos and explosions and stuff. That's kind of meaningless to you. But like, when you have trained with men and you've grown to love them, you realize that in those movies, those are actual human beings, and you're going to lose them if you go to war. So there's this weird thing. And you also, like, you don't want to, kill. As a Christian, you don't want to cause chaos and destruction and death, right? But then as a Marine, you have this thing in you that's like, if someone's got to go, send me. Like, I don't want something to happen, but if something's happening, I want to be there, right? And it's the same sort of thing, like people hear stories of 9/11, right? And they hear about what happened on the planes, or school shootings and things like that. There's this thing in me that's like, man, I wish I was there. And the reason isn't because I want to see the horrible thing. It's because maybe I could have done something.
Yeah.
Right? And like, I think to some degree or another that exists in some people more than others. But like for me, like it's in there. Like if something's going to happen that needs to be done, I want to be the one to do it, even if it's not something I want to happen. Right.
Yeah. Because like in Ephesians 2, like you are God's workmanship. Like you are God's creation, and it's not because you want the glory, you want to be the hero, but when God's creation does something miraculous and is the hero, it gives glory to Him, right? Yeah. And we're glorifying His name as we step into these identities and roles that He's given us, right? So, and yeah, that here am I, send me, like, and we have a tradition. I have a whole book. I'm going to write some down. This a tradition of like, oh, make sure you don't aspire, right? Yeah. Like, you sort of have to act like around.
Don't be too ambitious.
Yeah, you don't want to be ambitious in the ward or whatever. And I think there's the ways that this is culturally grown is gone wild, because the first person to ever aspire was Jesus Christ. Here am I, send me. He wasn't like, oh golly, me? You want me to be the same? Well, okay, I'll see what I can do. Like, no.
Yeah.
In his confidence and his full identity, he stood forward and said, here am I, send me. And I want to teach everybody here how to be that person to say, here am I, send me.
Well, thinking about that, because when you talk about aspiring, because like one thing that I think we would say is like, you don't necessarily want to aspire to leadership for the sake of having authority and power, right? You want to aspire to leadership in the sense of like, I want to be the type of person that is humble enough and capable enough to like lead a ward. Like you might have had a stake president or something that had like such an effect on you, or a mission president, and you're like, man, look how well put together that guy is. I want to be like that. So I think that the way Satan works is he works in counterfeits, right? So he takes something that looks like the same thing, but he changes the intent behind it, right? And so, but the answer, as you're pointing out here, isn't no, have zero aspirations whatsoever.
Right.
No, like that's bad. For you to think about like you wanting to be a mission president someday, no.
Right.
Like put that aside, right? No, but the answer should be no, aspire, but what are you aspiring to? I want to become. I want to be humble enough, capable enough, smart enough, strong enough, wise enough to be able to sit in a stake president's chair and to be able to properly act as a judge in Israel and to serve and to love people.
Yeah. And I always say, like, I don't need to be the bishop. I don't need to be the stake president or the elder court, whatever, but my name better be on the list you're praying about. Like, I want to be that kind of person.
That kind of guy.
You know, like if my name's not on the list, I'm sort of like, hey, what are you missing here? Like what lack I yet type of thing, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And it goes back to Matthew 5, like let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father which is in heaven. Isaiah said, thy people also shall be all righteous. They shall inherit the land forever, the branch of my planting, the work of my hands, that I may be glorified, right? Like this is how we glorify God, is step into these roles that feel impossible, that seem like this doesn't feel like me, but he's beckoning me into this story where maybe he can develop me to give him glory.
Yeah. So I like the way this is progressing. So the first one is we're looking for an endowment of identity. Once we realize that we are sons of God who have the ability to become like God, then it's like, all right, send me on a mission, right? Here I am, Lord, send me. Yeah. What's the next step?
So the endowment of identity, desire. The call to a mission, and then the third desire that men need. So John Eldredge says you need a beauty to love.
Yeah.
Now some people may not realize this, but about 10 years ago he changed this. It used to be a beauty to rescue. How do you think that went over in 2026, right?
Yeah.
Sure. Anyways, and that's another discussion. But because I don't think John Eldredge was trying to, platform this idea that we're, these poor women. We gotta.
They need us. Yeah.
They need men to rescue. And they're just getting themselves into trouble. Yeah. But there's something on the male side, right? That I need to be able to show up for my family. Yeah. If there is a bear on the trail, am I man enough to stand in between my family and them, or my wife and them, right? So I've tweaked this in a Latter-day Saint context that all men need a family to protect, because we have such a dynamic theology about the family. It's not just about the husband-wife relationship, and our family proclamation, it says to preside, provide, and protect, right? And men need that type of thing that, when the tire blows out and we pull over, I don't look at my wife and say, well, do you want to go take a look? Do you want to see, let me know what the problem is? No, we get out and we're like, I need to show up for my family. And there's a masculine experience in that. There was There was a reel that went viral a few weeks ago about a single sister. It seemed like she was in a YSA ward, maybe,
Yeah.
and she kind of went off about, hey, we're all the good men, like they lead us along and they don't want to commit. They're afraid of a relationship. And she said, we just need a partner in life. Now, generally, sure, I get what she's saying, but if you approach men and say, hey, will you be my partner? That is not as appealing as like, hey, will you show up for me? Mm-hmm. Like when I need a masculine, strong figure in my life, will you protect me?
Yeah.
That is more appealing to men to step into that relationship because it's connected to that divine identity that God has put in us of like, do I have what it takes?
Sure.
Can I show up for my family? So men need that.
Yeah.
Right?
And I will say this because, in the Family Proclamation, it talks about how men's roles are to preside, provide, and protect, right? And I understand how, if done wrong, so there's this word that gets thrown out, tyrannical patriarchy, right? Mm-hmm. And can patriarchies be tyrannical? Yes. Ask any person who's grown up in a home with an abusive father, maybe alcohol is involved, something like that. Tyrannical patriarchies exist,
yes,
right? That said, putting to side the obvious examples of tyrannical patriarchy, where usually the man has issues and is taking it out on his family. Generally speaking, what I'll say is this. My wife, there was like a moment in our marriage where, and it's not that my wife ever wasn't okay with the idea of like her letting me preside over my family. But there was this moment where it was during kind of a scary financial moment. We were starting the Stick of Joseph. Finances were really tight. Like life was the unknown was overwhelming. And we sat down and we were talking about like what to do. And she said, you know what? I trust you, and whatever you want to do and whatever you think needs to happen for our family, like I'm there for you. And then as her and I have talked about it more, this idea of submission, when my wife submits to me, it makes me like, holy cow, like this woman who's entirely capable, in many ways smarter than I am, when she is submitting to me, she's putting her trust in me. And it makes me rise to a higher level, and whatever tyrannical impulses are natural with every man, like it makes me throw them to the side. And I think many times what happens is a man who has this desire to preside, if a woman is not willing to trust and allow him to preside, he results to the tyrannical type because it's the only way he thinks he can fulfill that need to preside, right? And where it's a complete paradox, right?
Yes.
And so and I'll just end this thought with these verses, right? In Ephesians. So a lot of times it's Ephesians 5, classic verses, 21 or 22. Wives, submit yourself unto your own husbands as unto the Lord. For the husband is the head of the wife, even as Christ is the head of the church, and he is the savior of the body. And like a lot of times people read those verses and they're like, see, you need to listen to me, woman. That's the tyrannical patriarch, right? He'll take these verses and twist them. But he completely forgets these next verses. Therefore, as the church is subject unto Christ, so let wives be unto their own husbands in everything. Husbands, love your wives, even as Christ also loved the church and gave himself for it, that he might sanctify and cleanse it with the washing of water by the word, that he may present to himself a glorious church, not having spot or wrinkle or any such thing, that it should be holy and without blemish. So ought men to love their wives as their own bodies. He that loveth his wife loveth himself. For no man ever hated his own flesh, but nourisheth it and cherisheth it, even as the Lord the church. So then it goes on. I have to read these verses. For we are members of the body of the flesh and of his bones. For this cause shall a man leave his father and his mother, and shall be joined unto his wife, and they two shall be one flesh.
Love it.
So it's just like, and this is like where you have to have this give and take. A man needs to be trustworthy enough for his woman to say, I will submit to you. I will let you preside over our family. And then a man needs, and then a woman has to be humble enough to trust a man to do that. And there is just like this constant give and take, right? Where it's just like, hey, I think you're pushing it a little too far this way, and it doesn't mean that if a man presides over his family that it's just like doesn't talk to his wife and he's just driving the boat all on his own. No,
right.
It's like in a business, you never want to have a 50-50 business relationship. The business will fail. You have to have at least a 51-49, because there will come a point where you just can't agree on something and someone has to make a decision.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are kind of my
and like you said,
broad thoughts on that.
Yeah, that's great, because there's a paradox here, right? And we worship a God of paradox. There's so many, in the scriptures and in just the mortal experience that, yeah, it's not this isn't like a power dynamic that we're saying, hey, God said we need to preside, so hey, get in line. Like, it's more of like in that example you shared with your family, like, for you to know that your wife trusts you to make decisions for your family. Not that she's yielding all power and opinion over to you and be like, well, you're the guy now. But that's a very sanctifying experience for a man to say,
100%.
wow, yeah, like they trust me. Now do I have the strength to do that? And that's, again, where we have to orient to God to find that strength to offer to our family that our wife trusts us in offering there and to protect, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a powerful experience.
And I will say, like, nothing lit a fire under me more to like get shiz done and to stop wasting time and to stop scrolling Instagram or watching YouTube videos than when my wife, the mother of my 3 children, looks at me in the heart of financial crisis and says, I trust you to take care of this. I'm not going to try to make any extra money. I'm going to raise the children. And I'm like, first, it's amazing. Like it makes me feel so loved by my wife, but also just it awakens something in me that I didn't have before and that I needed in order to be successful.
I love how you put that. It awakens something in you, and that is the core desires that God put in your heart. Because not only are you, growing closer as a family or figuring out dynamics, or you're motivated, but you're becoming what God sent you to immortality to become, right? It's just, he's sending you on the journey, right? God can just show up and give you the brass plates or say, hey, actually, here's this successful, platform and podcast, just take it from here. He could have done that, but it's like, no, there's work going on here of development and sanctification that is so crucial in your masculine experience.
Yeah. No, that's awesome, man.
Yeah.
So I liked it. So you kind of took the core desires, right? Which is a battle to fight, an adventure to live, and a beauty to love, and you LDSified.
That's right, LDSified. Yeah, because I just think and as I read Eldridge, and I've interviewed him 3 times, and he's great. I love his faith, his perspective, but I'm like, man, like,
I feel like
if you had a little bit more information, there's so much here, right? To actually believe in a God with gender and believe in a God who considers us as children from the beginning, and there's so many of these nuances. This like, man, you're preaching the gospel, so but I don't think you really. Anyways, and bless his heart, he's a great voice.
And reading Captivating too. Me and my wife. So on deployment, we read that book together.
Wild at Heart.
Yeah, Wild at Heart. So we read Wild at Heart, and then we talk about it every single night. And then we also read Captivating together, which is like the women version.
Yeah,
of it,
the core desires of a woman's heart.
Yeah, and it totally changed. Like, it really helped me understand my wife a lot better as well. You know what I mean? That a lot of things that you look at women and you think, like, from a guy's perspective, you're like, that's so like vain or stupid, Like, oh my gosh, why do you have to get your hair done? And like, why is this taking so long? Like, you immediately, that book just completely makes you feel like an idiot for thinking that.
Yeah.
This is like,
oh, God actually put that in her? Okay, sorry about that.
The desire to create beauty, and what's the first thing that she has control over that she can create beauty from? And it's herself, you know what I mean? And it's an amazing thing. You don't want to live in a world where there isn't beauty, you know what I mean? That's what like communist Russia was. Like when I served in Hungary, and all the remains of communist Russia are just 10-story concrete buildings. Yeah. And you're like, yes, this is very functional, which is a man's way of looking at things. How do I make this functional and efficient? And you're like, oh, that society is barren and sucks. And so you need beauty, right? And so like foster that in your wife, like that desire she has to pick the right color of pillows for the couch, even though you're like, all I want is someone to lay down on. I don't care what color it is, right?
Yeah, so true. So true.
So that's awesome. Cool. Any other last minute thoughts that you'd like to share with our listeners about masculinity, about leadership? I know we could talk about this literally for 12 hours from a million different perspectives.
Or we could go somewhere in the woods for 3 days, disconnect from the world and connect on some of these principles, right? And that's
100%.
That's the thing is it's so interesting in our faith tradition is we do such a good job with youth. I mean, the FSY program, beautiful. Like I'm sending my daughter there the first time this summer. The girls camp, high adventure stuff, like so cool. The mission experience, like what a beautiful rite of passage, and just how it developed me. I mean, few men can talk about their missions without coming to tears, right? Then you come home and it's like, well,
next thing.
You got about 80 years. We wish you well and endure to the end and show up for a canning assignment every once in a while. That'd be great. All right, thanks, right?
Sit through an Elders Quorum lesson.
Yeah, good luck in Elders Quorum, right?
Yeah.
We sort of drop off. Now, this isn't an indictment of the institutional church. I mean, there's a lot of things going on there. But men need to understand, like, you still need that journey continues. You still need to feed your heart, right? You can't just get lost in your career, dial in your 401k, get lost in your family and sit on the sidelines of every Little League game and scroll Instagram assuming that, I'm at the game, right? I'm doing it, right? And so men need that experience of resetting, of regrouping. And so not that, the Warrior Heart boot camp experience is the only way to do it, but it's one to maybe disconnect for 3 days, and we talk about some of these principles and give some we call them vows of silence, of just go out and walk with God for a minute and see what else he has to tell you. And it's like my first time going, I came home and I met with one of the organizers. I'm like, on paper, this shouldn't work. This is ridiculous. If you would have shown me this agenda, I'd be like, well,
how is that supposed to help?
Not right. Yeah. And you can go to see our testimonial videos on our site of awarriorheart.com, and men just are like broken open because we focus on these experiences of like, actually you need to start with your heart, nurture there, talk about your fatherlessness. How are you posing in life? What wounding have you experienced in life? What, how are you showing up in the spiritual warfare, and how do you navigate this with the beauty in your life, that your wife and things like that. And so we haven't had to turn down a first-timer asking for a scholarship. So if you can't afford to come, we can make sure we find a donor who can get you there. And we have them all over the country. And so I invite the Stick of Joseph's crew and their audience to join us and be there. So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you graciously invited us out there, so we're going to be coming out, me and Jackson and other members of the Stick of Joseph crew. So we're super excited.
And that's the Arizona one you're doing,
Arizona,
right?
April 27th through the 29th. So anyone who wants to join will be there, and it's going to be awesome. It really was an amazing experience for me. And one thing, just so people understand, like one thing that's awesome about this is you're going off of the Wild at Heart kind of curriculum, you know what I mean, from this book. So you can read that if you want an idea of some of the things that we'll be talking about. But it's not LDS specific,
right?
And one of the amazing things about that is that you drill down to just like the basics. God and Jesus. Like you're getting rid of all the minutia of the annoying things that bug you about the church. So if you're kind of like, I'm sick of church, but I also do love God and Jesus, like it's a good place to just reset. And then what will happen is you'll come back to church because you'll have that foundation and you're going to be like, all right, I feel good. I'm happy to be here again. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you show up different to Elders Quorum after this experience in a very good way. So if you're struggling with your Elders Quorum, this is maybe a next step to bring some energy into it. So
yeah, well, hey, I appreciate it. I almost called you Frank.
I get Frank Kirkham all the time. Kurt Frankham, whatever.
I'm super happy to have you here, Kurt.
I could call
I'm
you
excited
Paul,
to hang out with you 100%. I get that all the time as well. So I'll see you in April.
Yeah, man.
And if any of you guys are interested in going to the Warrior Heart Boot Camp, link in the description. Love to see you guys there.
And I'll just mention, if they use the coupon Stick of Joseph, we'll give you $100 off
cool.
for first timers. So
that's awesome. Okay, well, we're excited. Thanks for coming. And until next time, stay curious and hungry.